Hi guys, this is part 2 of the roster deep dive series that I'm starting, and in this one I'm going to explain a little bit behind the theory of resource management in this game. It's a really hidden, nuanced part of the game, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it fully. They just kind of say, get these tunes, level them up really high, and have at it. But balancing, making really strong teams versus having a lot of teams is a really big part of this game. And understanding where the thresholds are, where viability is, where you need to push harder, where it's not really worth the resource investment, I think is a really important part. So that's what I'm going to discuss in this video. So at the lower tiers, you're basically using resources just to use them. This is mainly to do like milestones. So if you're 10K away from the next milestone in like the gold milestone, for example, and you wanted to spend it just so that you can get maybe you get more power cores there, so it's just worth spending the 10K, then this is kind of what I do. Is level 30 tier 6. This is just kind of basic. It doesn't use pretty much any materials whatsoever. It's almost all greens. It's pretty easy to level a bunch of guys to this. They're not viable in any content whatsoever, but if you want to win at lower levels of blitz, they're pretty useful. Just to get them up there, you can test them out. You can see kind of the animations. It's just kind of like a basic level, but not really much to spend on that. The next tier, again, this is mainly to waste a bunch of milestone mats, but there's another function on this one, which is you can use them in war to clean up really bad rooms, like if there's just default rooms, or if it has one OK tune, like a 20K tune, you can use a few of these guys to kill them. In addition to that, if you're trying to pop a boost in war, these guys sometimes can take a first hit, so you can wait to actually waste an ultimate. So it's just somewhat useful, but not worth fretting over. I chose this tier 8 and 5442 because this is right before you start using purple gear and purple ability mats, and that's really, really valuable. They're a huge bottleneck in the game, probably the biggest bottleneck in the game. So you got to be careful about spending them. So this is just kind of right before that level. Going past this level, I pretty much don't do unless I'm pretty much trying to get the guy to a viable level. And what is viable? That's what we're going to discuss next. So I think the base level viability in this game right now, with the current level cap and gear tier cap of 13 and 70 respectively, is tier 9, level 60, 6664. Now, you shouldn't blindly just pick abilities to bring to level 6. You should read them. You should see if they're worth it. There are definitely some abilities that aren't. And I'll give an example of Shield Medic in a bit. But this is probably the level of viability. And you really want them at 4 stars or 5 stars. 5 stars is probably where you could use them in a lot of Alliance War matches for some of the weaker teams. And basically at this level, you can clear a lot of Alliance War matches for weaker teams. You can sometimes punch up on direct counters if they have a direct counter. And they're good for cleaning up stuff. They're good for cleaning up that node that you just couldn't finish off. Unless it's Captain Marvel, be very careful with Captain Marvel. And they're just really good at just cleaning up duty in raids as well. They can kind of kill a node in a faction raid. So a lot of times, unless it's just like a mini boss. So it's a pretty good level of viability here. That being said, there's definitely tunes you got to be careful about, like Shield Medic here. Her special only goes up plus 400 healing, and at the end game, basics hit for 10K plus, so 400 healing is just nothing. And then the level 7 is another 400. The only reason you might do level 6 is if level 7 was really good. Let's say it was another 5% or something like that, but it's not. So I will probably keep this at level 5 for a really, really long time. The only reason you'd want to level it is to get more points in Blitz, but I kind of actually like not leveling it because it means my matchups in Blitz are a little bit lower because I sandbag the power a little bit. But in general, you got to read the descriptions. You got to make sure that they're worth you investing your ability mats, especially when you have so few. Now, I have 3,900 because I've just been accumulating them and saving them for a really long time. But for many people, it's a huge bottleneck, so you got to be careful. Okay, the next tier above that is level 70, tier 10, 5 stars. And this is around 5 or 6 stars is around this level. This is where you want to be like pretty competitive in Alliance War. You want to be able to punch up quite a bit. You want to be able to kill a lot of the higher meta teams out there. I kind of actually regret doing Spider-Verse. The reason why I did them was Fury Shield was really popular, and Brotherhood and Spider-Verse were the only two that could punch up against them in Alliance War, and I wanted two teams that could do it. However, they're really, really unreliable, and I kind of wish I left them at tier 9 actually in retrospect, but that's neither here nor there. That's probably the next tier. And then the one after that is arena viability. So if you notice here, I'm at tier 11. I think tier 11 is probably the last tier you want to go to, except for certain exceptions in arena. But this is also where you're probably going to be putting T4s into certain abilities because you use them a lot. If you want to be competitive in arena, you have to have higher power levels. There's just no way around it. You can get away with some comp matchups. You don't necessarily need ungodly power levels, but if you're not tier 11, you're gonna have a really rough time in arena. Like, your guys just die way too quickly. A Captain Marvel can one-shot many tunes that are like tier 9 or tier 10 and 5 stars. So you just got to be really careful about it. And yeah, like, you'll see also my Pyro here. I invested in his special and his ult here with T4s. Now, I'm going to do a deep dive into each team and explain why I think you should put T4s into them or not, especially given meta shifts. I would probably do things slightly differently now if I was starting from scratch. But the last tier above that is Fear the Darkness, and these are tunes you're going to take to Fear the Darkness. It's generally not worth taking a tune from tier 11 to tier 12 unless you're going to take them to tier 13. There are a few exceptions, like Captain Marvel is one that you could argue that tier 12 is really good, even though you're not going to take her to tier 13 maybe, or you're waiting to take her to tier 13. But in general, unless you're taking Fear the Darkness, leave them at tier 11. And in tier 13 is just, obviously the highest level you can. I have almost my Min Guardians team at tier 13 because that's the team I pretty much took to Fear the Darkness, in addition to Jessica Jones and Fury later, which is what I was trying to do. But yeah, this is also like, obviously in arena, if you have the gear to do it, if you're a whale, you could possibly do that and have your tunes really powerful. They're kind of scary. Around that 50 plus K when all 5 of your tunes are there, and then you get the Alliance War bump, it gets pretty scary. That's a pretty scary threshold where you're probably using 2 teams to bring it down, or you have a really unstoppable offensive team, or you're like just a higher power level yourself and you can just crush equivalent teams. So that's kind of the tiers I would use, and this is usually 7 stars. If you're not at 7 stars in this level, then you're working really hard to get there. So anyways, that gives you a little bit of idea of what I consider the tiers, and there's always slight exceptions to the rule, but in general, I think that's how you should think about the game. So I also want to say that you should be saving your resources as much as possible and then leveling or gearing or putting abilities in chunks. I think it's really important to pick the teams you want to work on and focus on that entire team. It helps in Blitz because it makes them all roughly the same level. 2, it makes it so that you can actually have a viable team, so you're not having like one weak character just drag the entire team down where you have to basically sub that character out. So I just think it's a really good practice to do things in groups of 5 or 6 or 4, depending on the team composition. So yeah, in the next video, I'm going to deep dive into the individual teams, or at least some of them, and explain to you why I did them this way they are, what I would do differently if I started over, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks.